All right. Hi, everyone. So I don't know about you, but the number of women that I've spoken to who have suffered chronic period pain, horrific bleeding, cramping, and mood swings is too many to count. And the thing is that these people, these women that suffer these debilitating symptoms, do so for years, often decades, before any healthcare practitioner will actually take them seriously. But before we dive into women's health and the current state, let's talk a little bit about the first elephant in the room. Why is a 40-something-year-old white guy talking to you about women's health? So I'm a scientist, and I work at the intersection of immunology and women's health. And I was drawn to immunology for the simple reason that I love the explanation it provides us for our built-in defense system, the network that protects us against disease. It's the same system that helps us create miracles, and the creation of life is one of those. I was drawn to women's health because there is a massive opportunity to help advance the world when you put health back into women's hands. And I want to share with you why that's a problem today and what we can do about it. I guess it's fair to say that I'm not a journalist, but I do feel like a war correspondent most days at work. I seek out, listen to, and try to make sense of these traumatic stories that women tell me about what's happened in their health. And these stories are truly horrific. And they're treated as normal, as part of everyday life for a very, very long time. There's stories like this. It took me 8 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. Stories like, it took 4 miscarriages to start a family. And then this. I got promoted, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to hold on to my job. Why? Because my menopause symptoms are so severe and so difficult to predict that I don't think I can show up the way I want to, the way I need to. So when we talk about the time we live in, the reality is that we live in a time where the taboo around women's health is being broken down every day. And the technology in our pockets gives us never before seen insight about our health and our well-being for women and for men. But we have a problem. And that problem is that women have been excluded from medical research for a very, very long time. And that problem creates a very, very big set of questions that don't have answers. So we don't know why one medication works for one woman and why it doesn't work for another. We also don't know why for certain conditions, why we can't identify easily and then treat pre-fertility conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome. And I don't know if you know of anyone who suffered of these conditions, but they often do so in silence. So I would like to ask you, what were you doing in 1993? And I know that some of you, frightening to me, were not even born at that point. In 1993, the US made it law that any research that was funded by the National Institutes of Health needed to include women and minorities. 1993. That's less than 30 years ago. Let's go a little bit further back. Let's go to 1977. 1977 was the year that the US Food and Drugs Administration recommended that women of childbearing potential were not to be included in phase 1 or early phase 2 drug trials until reproductive toxicology studies could be complete. Now, this was done in response to a growing set of drug-related incidents. The first of those, and the one that is probably most popular, is the issue with the sedative called thalidomide. So thalidomide was never approved for use in the United States, but it was used widely in Europe and Canada. And any woman who took that while she was pregnant, for the most part, delivered a child with horrible, terrible limb deformities. So you can see that by putting in and mitigating one risk, we set back the pace of women's health decades. And we don't talk about that often, but it's super important to realise what's happened, where we are, and where we go to next. Because you see, when women are able to own their health and have the time and space to navigate key moments in their life, like puberty or childbirth or menopause, then they stand ready to be able to achieve their hopes and dreams. But where that's not the case, it presents a massive problem. And why? Well, because we put women on the sidelines. And the reality is that we need them, we meaning the world, to help solve our biggest pressing problems, because we need their love. We need their compassion. And we also need their resilience. So what I'd like to say is that there's good news about women's health, and I'm going to share some of that with you now. The point about the good news, though, is that it comes with an invitation to you. And that invitation is to join a mission which is going to benefit, deeply benefit, our sisters, our nieces, our daughters, our mothers, our partners and our wives. And it starts with you taking up that challenge and accepting that mission. So let's dive into why things are looking good for women's health. Well, today, there have never been more female doctors in the world than today, and it continues to grow. We're on our way to parity. We also know that technology investment, or investment into the way in which female technology startups is being committed, has increased tenfold since 2012. And the female technology market is going to grow to $1.2 trillion US by 2027. 35% of that is going to be focused on chronic conditions and reproductive health. So that's the good news. But there's a problem. And that problem is really the second elephant in the room. And that second elephant in the room is the fact that male bias, the bias that my gender has held onto for generations, is actually creating a massive problem for women's health. And so when we think about how to remove that bias, we have to think about what the X factor is that's hiding in plain sight that can change today. And that X factor is men. So when we talk about what men can do to move the needle on this, I'm going to talk to the men in this audience and I'm going to talk to the men online. Everyone else can switch off for a minute. So, there are 3 ways that you can move the needle right now, men. I'm talking to you right now. The first one is that you can join clinical trials. In fact, it's not you, it's your partner. The bedrock for outstanding medicine and science is evidence, and evidence comes from clinical trials, from those trials that are managed and executed by passionate and experienced researchers. The thing, though, is that you can't do great studies unless you have great participation, and often that has been quite difficult. The good news is that there is a woman who has pioneered a service that allows us to enrol in studies very, very easily. Her name is Manuri Gunawadina, and she runs a platform called Health Match. It's an Australian business that has global reach. It allows you to go and peruse any kind of clinical trial, and it allows you to then enrol with all of the detail you need. So men, what can we do? We can sign up to Health Match with our partners. We can understand what clinical trials are. We can encourage them to participate. And you know what? We can enrol ourselves. That's number 1. Number 2, and I should say that all of these tools are pioneered by women. Number 2 is this. We can reimagine parental leave. Paid parental leave is a game changer for new and growing families. Why? Because it allows parents, both men and women, to be present at a critical stage in their child's development. And the good news is that Georgie Dent and the team at The Parenthood have the opportunity and we've created a huge amount of resource for you to level up your paid parental leave game. And so men, I say this to you. We can usher in new paid parental leave schemes that will change the game, not just for the team members you have, but it will also change the way that you recruit and retain into the long term. And the third one, lean into workplace wellness. Men, there will be 1.2 billion women who end up in menopause by 2030. 1.2 billion women. 1 in 10 of those women will leave the workforce because they can't manage the menopausal symptoms. These women are aged between 45 and 55 years old, at a time where they can least be allowed to leave the workforce because they have such amazing experience to bring to bear. Yet it's so easy to make a workplace menopause friendly. So the good news is that Shelley Horton and Dr. Ginny Mansberg have created a course called Don't Sweat It, which is available for any workplace in any industry to understand how to make sense of menopause and how to make menopause-friendly workplaces. These are the 3 things that we as men can do right now. And they will seriously change everything that has to do with the way that we can accelerate women's health. I want to invite you to join a movement which will allow us to move the needle on women's health. And I'd like you just to close your eyes for a minute. I'd like you to imagine a time where women's health is considered an asset, where those critical moments in a woman's life are considered crucial. Just imagine the joy. Imagine the confidence. Imagine the innovation. And imagine the problems that get solved as a result. In 1960, the US Food and Drugs Administration approved the use of the contraceptive pill. It was the first major step forward that women's health had in living history. What you might not know is that 250 women participated in the initial studies that made the pill available. It's now used by 150 million women around the world. That was in 1960. Which makes me think of a quote from Margaret Mead, the anthropologist. Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world, because the bottom line is, that's the only thing that ever has. Let me close by saying this to you. We can move the needle on women's health. All of the things I've mentioned to you today will allow you to move it so far that we will have the chance, as men, to remove the hurdles which we've put in their way. The future looks bright, and there is cause for hope with women's health. Thank you.